Harry didn't stop buying new cars because he suddenly got disciplined. He stopped because he learned one quiet rule that made the math feel embarrassing. It wasn't about status. It was about leakage. And once he saw the leak, he couldn't unsee it. Stay with this, because the rule doesn't just change cars. It changes outcomes. Harry was 31, living in a decent suburb where driveways quietly competed. Not with words. With leases. He earned $86,400 a year, $7,200 a month before taxes. After health insurance and a 4% 401k contribution, his take-home landed around $5,240. His fixed costs were clean on paper: $1,650 rent, $180 utilities, $430 groceries, $120 phone and internet, $290 student loan minimum, $160 insurance. Then the messy part, the car. He had a $612 monthly payment on a nearly new SUV, plus $140 in gas, plus $95 in maintenance averaged out, plus higher insurance because the lender required full coverage. On a normal month, the vehicle alone consumed roughly $947. When friends asked, Harry didn't say that number. He said, "It's manageable." But manageable is a strange word. It means surviving while losing. By month 1 of noticing his own cash flow, Harry realized his extra money wasn't extra at all. It simply evaporated in quiet categories: coffee, upgrades, quick deliveries, weekend errands that turned into purchases. And yet every time the payment hit, it was exact. It never forgot. It never forgave. And the twist is, that precision was the trap. Harry didn't think he was reckless. He thought he was normal. He drove what his co-workers drove. He signed what the dealership presented. He said yes to the extended warranty because the finance manager leaned in and lowered his voice, like he was sharing a secret. Harry loved that feeling, someone treating him like a serious adult. The car smelled like intention. It had screens, sensors, a backup camera that could see into the next county. It also had a 5-year obligation. That part was invisible when he was choosing paint colors under showroom lights. Month 3, he started tracking every outgoing dollar with a simple spreadsheet.
No apps. No gamification.
Just rows and honesty. His average leftover after all spending was $210. That's what remained of a $5,240 take-home. $210 between him and the next problem. And problems don't schedule themselves around paydays. He wasn't saving for a house. He wasn't building a cushion. He was maintaining the appearance of being someone who could. He told himself the car was for reliability. But reliability would have been a used sedan paid in cash. What he meant was, he didn't want to feel behind. This is the part most people miss. The purchase wasn't about transportation. It was about identity. The car wasn't a tool. It was a costume. And costumes are expensive when they come with interest. Then, on a quiet Tuesday night, something shifted. It began with a book Harry didn't expect to like. He found it the way people find turning points now, half by accident, half because an algorithm noticed a weakness. It was Morgan Housel, talking in that calm tone that makes the sharpest ideas feel gentle. The line wasn't flashy. That's why it worked. You don't see wealth. You see spending. Harry paused. He reread it. Not because it was poetic. Because it felt like someone had been watching his driveway. The next day, he did a tiny action that looked like nothing. He opened a note on his phone and wrote one question: what does this purchase cost me besides money? He didn't try to quit anything. He just started asking that question every time he felt the pull to upgrade. Week 1, he asked it at the dealership website. Week 2, he asked it at the car wash when he bought the premium package without thinking. Week 3, he asked it when a coworker mentioned a newer model, casually, like a weather update. By month 4, Harry noticed a pattern. The urge wasn't constant. It arrived in spikes, after a stressful day, after scrolling, after being around people who compared without meaning to. The point isn't willpower. It's the pattern. Still, insight didn't instantly fix anything. He still had the payment. He still had the insurance. The car still sat there, shiny and indifferent. But now it looked different. Not like success. Like a contract. And here's the twist. Once the contract became visible, Harry couldn't enjoy the costume anymore. Month 6 brought the boredom. That's where most people lose the plot. Harry didn't have a dramatic rock bottom. He had something more dangerous, an ordinary life that didn't feel urgent enough to change. He would open his spreadsheet, see the numbers, and feel a dull pressure behind his eyes. Not panic. Not despair. Just the slow ache of realizing he was working too hard for too little progress. At work, he was steady. Not a superstar. Not struggling. His manager liked him. His reviews were solid. His friends thought he was doing fine. That's the problem with quiet leaks. They don't trigger alarms. He tried a few quick fixes. Month 7, he canceled subscriptions and saved $38. Month 8, he packed lunches and saved maybe $90. Good moves. But the big line item stayed untouched, the vehicle. He started noticing how car conversations worked. Nobody said, "I'm paying $612 a month for this." They said, "It's only a couple hundred more than my last one." They said, "It's worth it for safety." They said, "I got a good deal." Language is a mask. Numbers are the face. Harry ran a simple thought experiment on a Sunday evening. If he could cut his car cost in half, what would happen? His monthly leftover would go from $210 to about $680. Not rich, but breathing. And breathing changes decisions. He looked up what his SUV was worth. Then what he owed. The gap made his stomach tighten. He was underwater by a few $1,000s, close enough to feel trapped, far enough to pretend it wasn't real. Then his friend Nate sent a photo of his new car. A clean sedan. New. Matte paint. Caption, "Finally upgraded." Harry felt the familiar pull, like a hand at his back. For a moment, he wanted to compete. And then something shifted again, because the pull now came with a question: what does this cost me besides money? The real battle wasn't financial. It was social. Month 9 is where the test arrived. Not a metaphorical test. A literal one, paid in dollars. Harry's landlord announced a rent increase, from $1,650 to $1,820. It wasn't cruel. It was market. Harry stared at the email like it was a personal insult. The math in his head did what it always did, searched for the smallest sacrifices. Cut dinners out. Skip a trip. Buy cheaper groceries. Then, the next morning, his check engine light came on. He brought the SUV to the dealership because that's where new car owners go. The waiting room had coffee and quiet music and people pretending not to watch each other. The service advisor smiled and returned with a printed estimate like it was nothing. $1,184. Not catastrophic. But combined with the rent increase, it was a punch. Harry could pay it, technically. His credit card could absorb it. His future self could deal with it. That's how people stay stuck, by outsourcing pain to tomorrow. In the parking lot, Harry sat in the driver's seat and didn't start the engine. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just felt something cold and clear. He realized he wasn't buying transportation. He was renting approval. And here's the identity shift scene most people never talk about. He imagined telling someone, "I can't afford this car," and felt shame. Then he imagined telling someone, "I choose not to," and felt power. The point isn't the car. It's the pattern. That afternoon, he made a decision that looked small but wasn't. He drove home, opened his spreadsheet, and wrote a new line item in bold, Freedom Fund. He set it at $500 a month, even though he didn't know where it would come from yet. And here's the twist: he wasn't sure he could do it. But he was finally sure he had to. Month 10 is where Harry learned the quiet rule. Not from a guru. Not from a viral clip. From an older coworker named Denise who drove a 10-year-old hatchback that always looked clean, never flashy. They were alone after a meeting, waiting for the elevator. Harry mentioned the repair estimate. Denise nodded once, like she'd heard the same story 1,000 times. Then she said softly, "I use a rule for cars." Harry asked what it was. Denise didn't say never finance. She didn't say buy used. She didn't say drive a beater. She said something quieter, almost boring: "If it has an engine, it can't steal my future." Harry frowned, and she clarified. All-in car costs, payment, insurance, gas, maintenance, stay under 10% of take-home. If it pushes past that, the car isn't transportation anymore. It's a tax on your life. 10%. Harry did the math on his phone. 10% of $5,240 was $524. His all-in was around $947. He was paying an extra $423 every month above the line. Not once. Every month. For years. Denise didn't shame him. She didn't need to. Numbers do shame better than people. That night, Harry sat at his kitchen table and wrote the rule at the top of his spreadsheet. Then he gave it a name because rules that stick need handles. He called it the quiet rule. And then he built a framework around it, 3 stages that would guide every decision, not just cars. He didn't reveal it to anyone yet. It was for him. A private map. Stage 1, stabilize. Build breathing room. Stage 2, simplify. Remove recurring drains. Stage 3, shield. Protect the gap between income and lifestyle. Here's the part most people miss. The rule wasn't restrictive. It was clarifying. And the twist is, clarity can feel like relief. Month 11 is when Harry started making changes that didn't look heroic. He didn't sell the SUV overnight. He didn't announce a transformation. He did what stealth wealth always does. It works quietly. First, he requested insurance quotes for older, cheaper cars, just to see the range. Then he checked used car prices, not for fantasy, but for reality. He called his lender and asked for the payoff amount. He looked at his emergency cash, $1,900. Too low. He looked at his credit card balance, $2,600. Too high. Stabilize first. So Harry did a short-term move. He paused his 401k contribution for 3 months. Not forever. Just long enough to build a buffer and avoid adding new debt. He redirected that 4%, about $288 a month, into the Freedom Fund. He also stopped optimizing his life with purchases. No more premium gas he didn't need. No more impulse upgrades. He started cooking 4 nights a week and made it boring. Chicken, rice, vegetables. A rotation. Systems over motivation. Month 12. He had $3,700 saved. Month 13, $4,200. Not huge, but enough to act without panic. Then he did something that felt like swallowing pride. He listed the SUV for sale. He expected strangers to lowball him. They did. He expected the process to feel humiliating. It did. But something else happened. He felt lighter every time he imagined the payment disappearing. He found a buyer willing to pay close to market value, but still less than what he owed. The gap was $2,900. Harry covered it with his Freedom Fund and a small side gig he'd started, editing resumes for coworkers, bringing in $250 to $400 a month. It wasn't glamorous. That was the point. When the SUV finally left the driveway, Harry stood at the window and watched it go.
No celebration. No regret.
Just quiet. And then something shifted, because silence is what freedom sounds like at first. Year 2 began with a car that didn't impress anyone. Harry bought a used sedan for $8,900, paid cash. It had scratches and a clean title and no monthly payment. Insurance dropped. Maintenance became predictable. His all-in car cost, averaged out, hovered around $390 a month. Under 10%. The quiet rule held. This is where Harry expected fireworks. He expected to feel rich. He didn't. What he felt was normal. And that's why it worked. In month 2 of year 2, his spreadsheet started showing a consistent surplus, $750 to $900 a month. Not because he earned more. Because he stopped bleeding. He rebuilt the Freedom Fund to $5,000. Then $8,000. Then $12,000. He restarted the 401k contribution. He opened a Roth IRA and set up an automatic transfer on payday so he wouldn't negotiate with himself later. He didn't tell his friends. He didn't post wins. He didn't change his wardrobe. Stealth wealth isn't secrecy for drama. It's privacy for protection. Year 2, month 6, Nate teased him. Still driving that thing? Harry smiled and said, "It gets me where I'm going." He didn't say where he was going. Towards options. The point isn't deprivation. It's alignment. A car should move your body, not trap your future. And here's the twist. Once Harry had surplus, he noticed temptations returned, just in a new costume. Bigger apartment. New tech. Better everything. Lifestyle always wants to expand to the edges of your income. That's why Stage 3 exists. Shield. By year 3, Harry's income rose to $93,000 after a promotion. His take-home increased to about $5,540. The old version of Harry would have celebrated with a new lease. The new version checked the quiet rule. 10% meant $554 all in for transportation. His sedan still fit. So he kept it. Instead, he increased his automated investing. He built a boring system, 401k to the match and beyond, Roth IRA monthly, a simple index fund and a taxable account for future flexibility. He didn't chase hot picks. He didn't pretend to be a trader. He focused on what he could control: savings rate, behavior, and time. Year 3, month 9, he crossed $50,000 invested. It didn't change his face. It changed his posture. He walked differently through stress. The fear of small emergencies started to fade. Then came the mid-journey numbers that rewire a person. Year 4, he had $92,000 across accounts. Year 5, he crossed $150,000. Not because he found a trick. Because he stopped buying the same illusion. The point isn't the dollar amount. It's the pattern. And this is the part most people miss. Once you break the car cycle, you stop rehearsing scarcity every month. You stop training your brain to accept obligations as normal. Harry didn't become extreme. He became consistent. But near the end of year 5, the story didn't climax with a purchase. It climaxed with a choice. Year 5, month 4, Harry's company announced restructuring. No warning. Meetings on calendars labeled, "Quick Sync." Hallways quiet. People smiling too hard. Harry got called in. The manager looked tired. The news wasn't personal, just procedural. His role was being eliminated. Severance was offered, 8 weeks. A polite ending. The old Harry would have felt immediate panic. Not because of rent. Because of the payment. The relentless, exact payment. But there was no payment anymore. He went home, opened his accounts, and saw what he built: $18,000 in cash reserves, plus investments he didn't want to touch but could if needed. He did the math. With his fixed costs now lower, no car note, he had runway. Months of it. And then the handoff moment arrived, the flip. Instead of scrambling for the first job available, Harry chose time. He took 2 weeks to breathe, update his resume, and apply selectively. He interviewed for roles that paid more, with healthier hours. He negotiated. Calmly. That calm was the dividend. He landed a new position by month 3 after the layoff, with a salary of $108,000 and a signing bonus. The difference wasn't just the money. It was his posture in the negotiation. He wasn't begging. He was choosing. Here's the twist. The quiet rule didn't just save him from car payments. It bought him leverage when life demanded it. The point isn't a nicer car. It's a stronger yes, and an easy no. Year 6 didn't bring a new vehicle either. It brought something more stealth, a lifestyle lag. Harry kept living like he made $93,000 while earning $108,000. That gap, quiet, uncelebrated, became his engine. He maintained the sedan. He kept it clean. He replaced tires when needed. He treated the car like a tool, not a mirror. Friends upgraded again. New models, new features, new monthly obligations. Harry attended the same dinners, laughed at the same jokes, and drove home in something unimpressive. He let other people win the visible game. Because he was playing an invisible one. Shield, in Harry's framework, meant 3 things. First, automation. Money left his account before he could spend it. Second, friction. Big purchases required a waiting period, 2 weeks minimum. Third, identity protection. He avoided environments that made him feel behind. Not because he was fragile. Because habits are fragile. There was one more stealth move. Harry stopped talking about money with people who wanted to argue with it. He learned a quiet line: I'm trying to keep things simple right now.
No lectures. No superiority.
Just silence. That's the discipline most people don't see. Not the spreadsheet. Not the savings. The restraint to stay invisible when ego wants applause. Year 7, Harry finally replaced the sedan. Not because it was outdated. Because it was done. He bought another used car, nicer but still reasonable, still under the quiet rule. Cash again, partly because he could, partly because he preferred the feeling of no lender in his life. He didn't post it. He didn't announce it. He just drove. And the twist is, that's what real wealth looks like from the inside. Quiet choices, repeated. Harry's story isn't a commandment. It's a pattern that scales. The takeaway is simple and uncomfortable. Transportation can either move you through life, or it can pin you to a job you've outgrown. The quiet rule just forces the question. 10% of take-home. All in. Payment, insurance, gas, maintenance. If it doesn't fit, the car is asking for too much of your future. The point isn't never enjoying anything. It's choosing what deserves your years. Here's what can be done tonight, without hype. Pull the last 3 months of spending. Write your real take-home number. Then calculate your all-in car cost. Not what the payment is. The full cost. If it's above 10%, don't panic. Just tell the truth. Next, build stage 1, stabilize. Create a small buffer, $1,000 to start, so decisions aren't emergencies. Then stage 2, simplify. Reduce recurring drains until there's a consistent surplus. Then stage 3, shield. Automate savings, add friction to upgrades, and protect your identity from comparison. And if a car change is needed, the goal isn't punishment. It's leverage. Harry didn't stop buying new cars to look humble. He stopped because he wanted options more than approval. This is educational content, not financial advice. Every situation is different, and it's worth consulting qualified professionals for personal guidance. But the rule remains quietly powerful, because it doesn't ask for motivation. It asks for math, and then for courage.